They didn't vanish. They were removed. Systematically. Silently. As if someone wanted their existence to be rewritten. Between the 1910s and 1970s, over 100,000 children were taken from their mothers in Australia. But this wasn't war. It wasn't famine. It was policy. Behind polished desks and smiling officials, something darker was being engineered. The world called them the stolen generations, but the truth is far worse than that name suggests. These weren't just children. They were bloodlines, languages, sacred stories, all erased under the banner of civilization. Government officials, backed by churches, legally abducted mixed-race indigenous children, tearing them from their families with military precision. The goal? To breed out the blackness, to erase an identity seen as inconvenient to colonial control. Imagine it. You're 5, soldiers knock, your mother screams, pleads, claws at their uniforms. You cry, but they don't care. You're forced into a car, then a dormitory, then a name that isn't yours. You're told your mother didn't want you. You're told your people were savages. And slowly, day by day, the child inside dies. No one told you that the real savagery was hiding behind white gloves and polished boots. The newspapers didn't report the trauma. The schools didn't teach it. And the world? It moved on, as if these children were nothing but footnotes. But trauma doesn't disappear, it echoes. Through the generations, through the silence, through the DNA of every man who wonders why something inside him has always felt broken. And that's why you're hearing this now. Because this isn't just history, it's a map of control. Stay with me, because this rabbit hole, it goes deeper than you've ever imagined. When they take your child, they don't just steal a body, they hijack the soul and implant a new history. You were never meant to know this. The removal of those 100,000 children was not just about assimilation, it was about genetic warfare. An unspoken experiment in biological conquest masked as benevolence. They called it protection. They said it was for their own good. But underneath the polished language, the truth was brutal. A nation wanted to erase the roots of a people and replace them with silence. Once removed, these children were stripped of their culture, forced to speak English, taught to hate their heritage. Some were renamed. Most were beaten. Many were abused in ways the system still buries in sealed files. You see, it wasn't chaos. It was design. Because when you take a child from their mother, you fracture something ancient. You interrupt the lineage. And that's what the architects of control truly wanted. To sever the wisdom passed through mothers. To disconnect spirit from blood. This wasn't about education. It was about programming. These stolen children were reshaped to serve a narrative that favored obedience over identity, docility over dignity, amnesia over ancestry. And that same psychological blueprint, it's still in use today. Every time a culture is branded primitive, every time media tells you who the hero is and who to fear, every time you're trained to forget where you came from. What happened in Australia was not an isolated tragedy. It was a template. A silent operation of erasure, repeated across continents. If this stirs something in you, it should, because you are not immune. You are not untouched. And now, I need you to prove you're still awake. Comment below. Blood remembers. Silence ends. Write it twice. Lock it in. We're not done yet. We've only peeled back the first layer. They didn't just take children. They planted illusions. And the most dangerous kind of slavery is the one that looks like freedom. Once the children were taken, the manipulation didn't end. It evolved. They weren't just placed in orphanages. Many were handed to white families trained to civilize them. But in reality, they were vessels for indoctrination. A grand social experiment. Can you overwrite identity by reshaping memory? You teach a child to say thank you to the ones who stole them. You reward obedience with affection. You punish curiosity with isolation. You break the will and call it education. And if that sounds familiar, it's because the model still exists. Governments, corporations, media, they've perfected it. They've turned this same method inward, onto their own people. You see it in school systems that teach you what to think, not how. In religions that demand blind faith, not inner truth. In screens that keep you docile, addicted, fragmented. Because control isn't maintained through chains anymore. It's maintained through narratives. If they control your story, they don't need to control your body. You'll police yourself. That's why they erased indigenous languages. Because language is spellcraft. The words you use shape your perception of reality. If they can erase your mother tongue, they can erase your ability to see what's been done to you. And you may think you're free. But ask yourself this. Who wrote the script you're living in? Who told you what success means? What to fear? What to chase? Every empire, ancient or modern, survives by convincing the conquered that they were never whole to begin with. But now the fog is lifting. The ones who see this truth, they don't kneel. And neither will you. The silence was never passive. It was waiting. Breathing beneath the surface, like buried fire. You weren't supposed to hear their voices. Not in textbooks. Not in the media. Not even in the government's empty apologies. Because if the world truly listened to the cries of those 100,000 children, the lie would collapse. Not just in Australia, but in every system built on erased truth. But something changed. Not in the system. In the souls of those who survived it. The stolen children became mothers and fathers. Their trauma carved scars into their DNA, but it also awakened a fire that refused to die. And now, across deserts and cities, across oceans and bloodlines, you can feel it. A quiet uprising. The languages they tried to extinguish are being spoken again. The songs they banned are being sung in ceremonies under the stars. The culture they buried is being remembered, piece by piece, ancestor by ancestor. Because truth never stays dead. It waits, and when it rises, it doesn't ask permission. And what does that mean for you? It means that you too carry echoes. Echoes of forgotten ancestors, of truths you've been taught to ignore, of instincts they called primitive, but were actually sacred. You are not just a man of flesh. You are a chain of memory, a map of defiance. They want you disconnected, distracted, ashamed of your roots, because a man without origin is easy to own. But a man who remembers, he cannot be controlled. So I leave you with this. The silence is ending. The blood remembers. Comment it again. Lock it in. Because if you've listened this far, you're not the same man you were at the beginning. You've seen behind the veil. Now carry the fire. And never, ever let them rewrite you again.